I'm 65 years old and I'm starting over. Now, if you're around the same age as myself, you're probably saying to yourself, 65 years old, why would you want to start over again? And I understand that. I get it. Because you know what? I used to think the same way. Here's what nobody tells you about starting later in life. You're actually not starting later in life. You're actually starting with experience. You're starting with lessons. You've already done the mistakes. And you're starting with something much better that really matters. I wish somebody would have told me this years ago. About 30 years ago, I started in the corporate world. And I worked really hard. I built a career. I developed people. I've learned a lot and dealt with responsibilities. I had a routine. And like most people, you assume that that was going to continue. You get comfortable, and then you start thinking, yeah, this is life. And then something happens that you didn't even plan for. In my case, that chapter came to an end. And when you have spent decades, many years building a career and having everything that you thought you were going to have and you got comfortable, you start thinking, when it all comes to an end, you start thinking, what next? What am I going to do right now? Am I too old or too late to start over again? Maybe you've asked yourself those same exact questions. And maybe you've retired, or maybe you've lost your job. Maybe your business didn't work out. Maybe your children have grown up, and you really find yourself that you don't have a purpose anymore. Maybe nothing dramatic has happened in your life, and you just woke up one morning. You realized, I don't want to spend the next 10, 20 years or so doing nothing. I know I would go stir crazy. I got to do something. And that's exactly where my journey began. Here's the funny thing about getting older. When you're younger, you don't even think about it. You change jobs, you learn something new, you bounce around, you make mistakes, you try again. You keep doing it over and over again. No worries. But somewhere along the way, you start thinking that we're supposed to have everything figured out. And when something happens, when you're 50 or you're 60, you feel like you're falling behind. But here's what I learned. There's no expiration date on learning. There is no age limit on curiosity. But here's what I've learned. There's no rule that says at the age of 65, you can't start something new. Who made that rule? And then again, why are we even listening? Then I decided, instead of just sitting around wondering, what am I going to do next? I just decided to start learning. I started learning something completely different outside of my realm of all my, decades of career in the corporate world. I started learning digital marketing. But let me tell you something. It wasn't easy. I didn't grow up with all this technology. I wasn't sitting around at the age of 20, learning social media and being on different platforms. I had to learn all this stuff. I had to learn content. I had to figure out websites, social media, algorithm, SEOs, marketing. There were many moments where I was thinking, what the heck am I doing? And that taught me something. You don't have to know everything before you start. You just learn one step at a time and just keep going forward. And that's it. Not everything, just the next thing. And this I truly want you to hear, because this stops many people from getting started. They think, I don't know enough. I don't know how to get started. I don't know social media. I'm too old. There are already way too many people doing this. Look, I understand. I was thinking those same exact things. But here's what I learned. You don't have to be an expert. You just got to be willing to start and take one step at a time. You become better by doing. Think about everything else you learn in life. You just didn't become an expert overnight. I didn't become successful in my corporate world overnight. It was 30 years of building. So you just got to basically accept the fact you take one step at a time. We've made mistakes. I've made mistakes, but then you learn to figure it out. And you learn and you keep going. And then one day, something that looked very complicated, it looked very comfortable. And that's exactly what's happened to me. And there's another thing. I think that most people over 50 or 60 underestimate their experience and their knowledge. Think about everything you've done in life. You've dealt with people. You've solved problems. You've made very important decisions. You probably experienced success, and you've also probably experienced a lot of failures. You raised family. You built career. You basically have done things that somebody in their 2025 hasn't even experienced yet. Hey, listen, that's not baggage. That's actually an asset. And here's one thing. You're not competing against a 25-year-old. You don't have to be the youngest person in the room. You just bring something different to the table. Perspective. And I think that that is an incredible value. The biggest lesson I've learned through this is that the biggest danger is not failure. The biggest danger is actually deciding not to start. Not trying teaches you something. Imagine reaching 70 and you're looking back and saying to yourself, I wish I tried at least. That's the sentence that I do not want to repeat. I would rather love to say, I tried, I've made mistakes, I've learned, I figured some things out, and I kept going. Because you know what? That's what life is supposed to be. Not standing still, is to actually keep moving forward. So let me talk to you directly. If you're over 50, or you're over 60, or you're over 70, and you're thinking that you want to start something different, I'm talking to you. Maybe you want to start a new business. Maybe you want to start something new. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to start creating videos. Maybe you want to write a book. Maybe you want to go back to work. Maybe you want to reinvent yourself. Whatever it is, don't automatically say to yourself, I'm too old to start. Ask yourself a different question. Instead of, I'm too old, why don't you ask, what could I accomplish in the next 5 years? Think about it. 5 years? That's going to fly like that. So let me ask you, where would you rather be in 5 years? Where you are similar to right now or something different? You don't want every year to be a carbon copy of the previous year or 5 years older. With 5 years of experience that you decided to pursue, that's the question. And look, I want to be completely honest with you. I don't have everything completely figured out. I'm still learning. I'm still making mistakes. I'm still trying new things. Some things work, some things don't. Some videos get views, some videos don't. And that's okay, because I'm not trying to prove that I have everything figured out. I'm documenting my journey, and I'm sharing everything that I'm learning every step of the way. And hopefully somebody who's watching this sees themselves in this story. And that's why I'm doing this. And I want people to understand that your next chapter doesn't have to look like anything of your last chapter. You can change direction, you can learn, you can start. Maybe you spent 30 years working for somebody else. Maybe you spent 40 years taking care of somebody else. Maybe you spent your whole life doing what you thought you were supposed to be doing. Now, maybe it's your turn. And maybe ask yourself, what is it that I want? Not what your employer wants, not what your kids want, not what society wants. What do you want? Hey, I'm not saying quit everything. I'm not saying take your life savings and start a new business. I'm saying start learning, start exploring, start asking questions. Just start taking small steps. Because sometimes the next chapter doesn't start with a giant leap. It just starts with one small decision. So here I am at 65, starting a new chapter, learning something completely different and building something new. And I have no idea where this road is going to take me. But you know what? I'm excited about it. Maybe you're standing at the same crossroads. Maybe you're thinking it's too late. Maybe you're thinking that you're too old. Maybe you're thinking that you missed your opportunity. If that's you, I want you to remember this. You haven't missed the opportunity to live your next chapter. Your story isn't over because one chapter ended. And sometimes that's where it really gets interesting. I would love to hear from you. How old you are? What is it that you would love to start? What's your next chapter that you would of your dream? Put it in the comments. I would love to hear from you. I'm serious. I want to read them. And you know what? Maybe somebody's watching and thinking, you know what? If they can do this, I can do that as well. And if you're interested to follow my journey as I figure it out at the age of 65, then subscribe and follow. And we're going to learn this together. Because I'm not here to tell you that I have all the answers. I'm here to tell you that it's never too late to start looking for them. Hi, my name's Frank, and I want you to remember this. It's never too late to start your next chapter.